excited to have on here today Dr. Amy Athey of Athey Performance and a clinical and performance psychologist and founder and CEO of Athey Performance, which we'll dive into a little bit more about what that means. But thank you so much for being on here today, Dr. Amy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have a conversation.
Me too. I'm excited to talk to you today. I know you have such an interesting background and backstory that I feel like we probably could go into that all day long. And I do want to dive into that. I like to give people a chance to kind of do their little introduction. First of all, tell us what your business today is. Let's start there. And then I do want you to take us through a little bit of like what brought you to where you are today.
For sure. So Athey Performance is a concierge level coaching, training, and consulting service to help business leaders, individual performers, teams, organizations optimize their performance. And we have some world-class team members who serve looking at whether it's leadership, teamwork, through the performance optimization lens. And so we all have a background in working with elite performers and working together and as an interdisciplinary team. So we take a very holistic approach, whether we're giving a talk or a training or providing that executive coaching. We have an interdisciplinary human performance team. I serve on that part in the leadership development, mindset, performance psychology space. And my colleagues, we also have a performance dietitian who serves to look at biomarkers, how we're fueling, hydrating, supplementing to help provide the energy that's needed to meet life's demands. And then we also have world-class physical coaches. So those coaches help either individual performers or even teams look at activity and recovery and how we can not only optimize performance, but sustain that over time. So I feel incredibly fortunate to have the team that I do. I'm humbled to be a part of it, frankly. Just wonderful humans and fantastic experts. So it's very exciting.
That is so cool. I think that it just sounds so holistic. Like as you said, you have kind of you're not looking at this from one place or one expert. You have this team built out. And so I know you offer like kind of different things, but like if somebody comes to you, do they automatically get the whole team? Like they're seeing all of those people and interacting with them, or is it more like depends on what they need? Like somebody might only focus with one of those coaches or a few of them, or how does that work?
So the three main services we offer are speaking, training, and coaching. So certainly if you need a keynote speaker, an offsite, or a lunch and learn, we could totally hook you up with a very niche presentation, and it may just be one of us. Same with training, depending if you're looking to develop a curriculum or augment, say, a hypo leadership development program in your enterprise company. We could possibly again meet the needs of that organization. For the coaching, we very much have all worked in this standard, what has now become the standard of practice in elite high performing organizations. All of us come from a background from high elite sport or special forces. And if you look at those industries, what you have seen is this holistic, integrated approach to performance optimization is now standard practice. So for coaching, if we are working with executives, they would have touch points with all three disciplines only because we would be remiss if we weren't approaching the human system in that way. And I'll give a very specific example. You'll hear, say, for example, an executive is coming in and they're talking about emotional regulation or wanting to basically cool their temper a little bit so that they can better listen to understand, maybe make higher quality decisions, maybe reduce the impulsivity, maybe not jerk their team around. We're going this direction, the next day we're going this direction. But really what it comes down to is that energy management in the moment, as well as the quality decision making. As a performance psychologist, I can work in helping them perhaps use skills that maybe they already have used effectively, we can dose that and get them into using that and rehearsing and using that more effectively, dosing it more heavily. We could also shift and perhaps add other tools to their toolbox, identify those specific tools that they can use, give them an opportunity to rehearse that, reflect, evaluate, iterate that so that tool becomes their own and hopefully now a new part of their skill set as a leader. With all that being said, I can practice, I can offer the skills of, say, diaphragmatic breathing or sighing to help regulate their heart rate. I perhaps could talk to them about their perspective and how they're making sense of the challenge in front of them. If, however, their sleep is compromised in quality or quantity, if perhaps they're not taking in adequate fuel, so they're not taking in enough calories given the demands in their life, if there is very little physical activity, if someone is incredibly compromised, let's just start with sleep, just one of those things. No amount of deep breathing that I can teach someone is going to help offset the sleep disturbance or the impact of inefficient sleep on their human system. So for us, because all of us have worked in, like I said, these high performance environments where these other industries have found this to be so critical and taking this integrated approach that now it has become standard practice. We just strongly believe in that philosophy. And so if someone is coming for us for coaching, they're going to get um, they're going to get support from all three disciplines in that holistic high performance manner.
Yeah, that's such a, I thank you for breaking
Mhm.
that down and explaining like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. And what stuck out to me is that, and then I'm going to ask you to go into more of the background too, for sure. But, and we'll go more into this later. But like, as you said, I just feel like there's this idea of like, oh, a high level executive, like, we're not, there's no time for sleep or like that kind of thing. Like, but they might fully be optimizing their schedule and other things throughout their day. And as you said, when you really look at other high performers like athletes, it's they're
Mhm.
not going to even question you on how important something like sleep is. And
Right.
sometimes have such a different kind of way of thinking about different kinds of high performers, I guess, or different kinds of high achieving individuals. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, why don't we look at what these people who are really maybe achieving a lot in like a physically demanding or really just any other area where they've actually already kind of seen, yeah, we wouldn't think about these things without taking them all together, without thinking about sleep, without thinking about nutrition and stuff. And like
Yeah.
some in the business world, we're just like, nah, we don't need all that. No time for all that.
In the reality, it's been a journey in those other industries, quote unquote, as well, right? I mean, back in the day, you used to see bumper stickers like, while you're sleeping, I'm in the gym getting stronger. Like it has been a journey and evolution. And there are also still very pragmatic challenges to elite athletes' schedules to be able to sleep, or to say Navy SEALs and the cadence of their missions or their training, right? So um, I would be remiss if I'm just suggesting to you, oh, elite athletes and Navy SEALs, they found this way and they get 8 quality hours of sleep and they're doing all these other things. They still have real life constraints, right? And they're still humans, right? So they're Navy SEALs are married. They go home to children and a spouse and are a son or a brother or a friend. And so um, I think we can look at those who have performed truly in the most critical moments that matter. You're talking about national security or a game. While it's a game, it still has incredible consequence. It's highly visible, it's highly scrutinized environments. And what can we take away from those elite performers and those high performing teams? I will never make the Olympic podium. I will never jump out of a plane and go on target. Um, Yet in my own personal moments that matter, serving as a coach, providing a training or a speaking engagement, or even maybe showing up as a mother to two teenage daughters, right? In those critical moments that matter in our lives, whatever our roles and responsibilities may be, there still may be tools that we can use from those who have performed in conditions we could never imagine. And so there's a bit of interplay for me that some of these tools aren't just for when we show up giving the pitch or, that presentation or in the boardroom or working with our teams. Some of it also is incredibly valuable in our other areas of our lives.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's, yeah, we should definitely dive into that more for sure.
Yeah,
Um, I want to hear, well, so first of all, just because we kind of said this quickly at the beginning, but you're a clinical psychologist and a performance psychologist. Is
yeah,
that something, like, if I feel like we kind of are getting the sense of what that is, like what is the difference between a clinical psychologist and a performance psychologist, I guess, or like how does
for
that
sure.
each other?
So I guess I'll answer that a little bit by kind of sharing on my journey, if that's okay. So
That's
actually,
where I wanted to go next.
it's fascinating now that I find myself working more with corporate athletes and teams, because actually my career began, and my undergrad was in business, and at the time, oh, this is many moons ago, um, but at the time, I never felt found the lane that felt like a great fit. And I went on, after undergrad, I served in AmeriCorps for 2 years in Baltimore City and had an opportunity to be a part of service projects that were helping people lift their lives. And I found great fulfillment in those connections. And so I found myself, I made my way back to taking some clinical psychology classes and pursuing a master's and then a doctorate degree at Loyola University in Maryland. Um, Clinical psychology, um, a couple of key differentiators. One, we are often looking at trying to better understand in a medical model, diagnose and then treat those who are suffering in their lives from some type of mental health issue. Um, Most commonly in our society, major depression or generalized anxiety disorder. More severe and persistent mental illness may be something like bipolar or schizophrenia, right? So it has history, roots in essentially helping people, um, tr improve their functioning back to what we would consider normal functioning, right? It's kind of like if you have another illness, you want to get well back to a normal, quote unquote, normal state. Um, when we look at performance optimization, so in my tenure, I provided psychotherapy, for example. I did a lot around psychological assessment. Um, and then early on in my career, I did a lot around trauma, a lot on the crisis intervention end. So I worked with a mobile crisis team in Baltimore. I responded to Ground Zero, supporting NYPD and fire after 9/11. I did a lot around crisis intervention and trauma recovery. Um, I found my way into the university setting, working with college students, providing psychotherapy. Some of those were some of those illnesses I described, like major depression or generalized anxiety, some of them what I would consider developmentally like our normal challenges in our lives, right? Adjusting to more independent living or recovering from loss, for example. But also in those settings, I had a great opportunity to continue working with student athletes. And I was introduced to the field of sport and performance psychology by a good friend and colleague, Dr. Jessica Moeller, early on in my graduate training. And I was a college All-American basketball player. I had never heard of it before I met her. And all of a sudden, everything kind of like made sense for me. It was a wonderful blend of Amy in my background in sport and then certainly just the curiosity and fulfillment came from gaining more expertise and competency in that area. So big introduction into the field of performance psychology was through sports psychology. And in general, what we're doing, instead of treating a mental health issue to regain functioning, we are looking to help those individuals, leaders, or teams um, optimize their functioning and be able to do so consistently and sustain that over time. Michael Jordan, one of the reasons he's one of the greatest of all time, it's not just because he could go out and score 40 points in a game or, just have record-setting single game performance. What made him phenomenal was his ability to maintain a high level of performance and do so consistently over time. Um, and so especially at the most elite levels, given the wear and tear on the body and the long amount of training and pressures that come with that. A big part of it is also helping people sustain that high level over time. So I hope that answers your question, a little bit of my background as well. But in general, performance psychology is looking to help optimize functioning and performance.
And was that so did you go back to school to get like certification in that as well, or is that like other?
The leading credential in sports psychology is from the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. Um, I was part of a working group earlier on that developed it's a test-based credential as a certified mental performance consultant, and there are basically what we would consider knowledge criterion that people um, gain from formal education, so certain courses. It is an interdisciplinary field, so it comes from the sports science, psychology, athletic medicine, right? So there were courses I had to go and take outside of my doctoral training in psychology, exercise phys, biomechanics, for
Wow.
example. Um, and then to pull that interdisciplinary knowledge base. And then having those experiences consulting, coaching individual performers or teams that were supervisor. I had mentorship from those who had been there before, and I could learn from them. And so, yes, it is an added credential as a mental performance consultant. And it's exciting to see the field grow. So, certainly in the last 15 years, more than that, probably 18, we've just seen tremendous growth in the field. And um, I now learn from not just like my colleagues, but the ones coming up. I learned so much from those who are coming fresh out of training. It's exciting to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think that sounds so impressive. I mean, it's a lot, and it sounds like you just sounds like you're so knowledgeable in all of these spaces and have done so much there. And um, I just think it's worth, hearing more about that and going over that and letting people know this is a thing and what it takes if maybe they're interested in the field or I think there's just a lot out there these days too of like a lot of different people who can tell you what to do and like tell you how to be better and things like that. And um, you just have like real credentials around like how to know these things and what
Well, I appreciate that. I think whether it's coming from me or another expert, I think, we are not starved of information these days, right? Like I used to use the analogy of like when you went to the bookstore into the self-help section, but now all you have to do is pick up your phone and this reel or that post or that video.
it's
There
like
is a ton of information out there. And what I will say, and where oftentimes I think the disconnect comes, is that knowledge is not sufficient for change.
hmm
It is critical, right? I mean, if you're unaware, you don't have a clue, right? Like it is a critical element, awareness and knowledge of what I can do differently. But if it was all that was needed, then we would all be making the changes that we're looking for in our lives, whether that's as a mother or as a partner or as a business person. Um, so the question is then, why is that? Why is it that we see healthcare workers standing outside of a hospital or a healthcare system smoking cigarettes? If I were to ask them, is this good for your health? I guarantee you they will unanimously say, no, it's not good. So why is that? And I think one of the, I guess, pieces that motivates me and kind of still feels incredibly fulfilling is helping people not just learn, but then take that information and knowledge and use that to transform into action, where they have greater fulfillment, perhaps the actions and the experiences in their lives feel more congruent with who they are and what they value, um, or they have that achievement in however they're defining their success. It is the action, it's the change that I find still, I don't know, incredibly, it's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be a part of that and to observe all of that goes into it. It's very hard work, and yet it's amazing to be a part and have, I don't know, I feel blessed to somebody would let me into their life to be able to go through that work and that change.
Yeah, yeah. I imagine it's always a new challenge in different ways
Yeah,
every time too.
yeah.
And I definitely want to go into that more, but I want to also have a chance to hear a little bit about how you kind of went from all of the training and all of like where kind of where you left off that story, and then and you can give the quick version. We don't have to go into all the details because I
Okay.
know you have extensive background and experience here, but I want to hear like basically what ended up leading you to starting your own business, first of all, because obviously there's a lot of different places and ways you can go with this background. And also, like I know you alluded to the fact of that everyone on your team has worked with like professional athletes, Navy SEALs, things like that. So I just know the people are wondering like
Yeah. How did
wow,
that come together?
where did that all come? Yeah, and
Yeah, so for 25 years now, I've worked with elite performers in sport, military, and business. The kind of front half, or a little bit more than half, three-quarters of that was front loaded in working at NCAA sporting organizations. Um, I kind of made my way through the conferences, if you will, if you follow collegiate sport, starting out in the ACC to the SEC to then Pac-12. And through that journey, had varying experiences, but always within, as I mentioned to you, that holistic, integrated approach. Um, Along the way, the field was growing as well as the demand was growing. So I had an opportunity to kind of shift into more leadership positions, building out teams. Or programs. And then I shifted at the University of Arizona, had a wonderful opportunity to serve as chief wellness officer during COVID. So that charge was really how we could strengthen the mental health and well-being supports, really in support of performance, right? We wanted our students to remain enrolled. We wanted, despite that adversity, despite the stressful events, we wanted our faculty or staff to be able to come and perform at amazing, right? Whether it's teaching, researching, et cetera. And then certainly for the students to graduate, to complete their degrees. So I kind of in that role tapped these non-traditional mental well-being supports, whether it was life coaching or whether it was psychological first aids. We were able to build out Wildcats Rise, which was that peer support psychological first aid program for that community of 45,000. And it was from there that I then got the call from a colleague that I had known for many, many years, asking me about specifically a Navy SEAL team was looking for expertise around sleep for well-being and performance. And while at Arizona, had wonderful opportunity to connect with a leading researcher there, and we built a program funded by the NCAA for that. So when I got that call, I was torn. I was really enjoying the systems level of intervention for program support. While I wasn't doing the direct service anymore, I really enjoyed the leadership role that I was in. And yet, on the personal note, Virginia is my home state. And as many during COVID had that moment of reflection and thinking about my family connections and my children, being able to have more contact with them. And honestly, there wasn't another group of professionals that I could imagine being pulled away for other than this team. So had an opportunity to come and join the human performance team at Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and was incredibly fortunate to work with those professionals for close to 3 years. And you ask, how did Athey Performance then come about? Um, With business along the way, I was part of a startup. I've been now two startups. I currently am serving as Chief Clinical Officer and advisor for Potential, which is a well-being startup, specifically in helping organizations connect their employees through a very customized recommendations and the use of an assessment based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Um, it's a dynamic platform, and we're very excited to be able to help organizations improve utilization of those benefits and those supports for their employees for well-being and performance. Prior to that, was a co-founder of a startup looking to democratize access to coaching through the use of a coach bot or chat bot. This is before ChatGPT and all of that's going on with the chat bots that are out there now. So I guess I never left the business like path. It just was here and there through my career. And so there's a lot about being an entrepreneur that like never left me. And over the past 10 years or so, I would receive inbound asks for, can you do this keynote? Or could you help us with this training? Or could you coach this executive? And I would call them more like one-off work, but that started growing. And it kind of all came, it just felt like it was time to take the leap and shift from the internal roles that I had worked in for the 25 years and go out on my own, if you will. So like any change like that, it's daunting, and there's some moments where I'm like, whoa, this is a lot, navigating this new space, and yet it's also invigorating because it is a new challenge. And I've always been one who I enjoy my work. If you look at like a work week, I enjoy the many different roles that I might have. I always have. So um, yeah, so that's how we got here today. It's just it started small, and it's still, we are very much a concierge type company. I think that is where I feel the work is most fulfilling and of greatest impact and value to those who we're working with. So um, it's been a good transition so far.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
Mhm.
And I think, well, actually, so I mean, you work with, I imagine, people from all over the place. Is it mostly, it's not like you have a physical, the team is all in one place and you have people walking in the doors. You're working with people like virtual.
Yeah, no, we are all remote based, and then certainly coaching services, training, or speaking could always be on site at a client's request. But yes, we're all remote based.
So I have to ask, what does like it look like for you day to day? I know you said it's like different every
Yeah,
day, like from and then we're gonna dive more into like specifics of like how can we perform better maybe. I know that could
yeah,
probably be obviously way more than we can cover in an hour. But for you as a business owner and, a busy person who's also has all these other roles, you mentioned having teenage daughters and
yeah.
everything else that goes into life, and now running a business, managing your own team. What does like your day look like, from the moment you wake up in the morning or whatever, not like your actual work day, but like how are you spending?
Yeah. Well, every day can look different. I guess I can share a couple of things that have remained consistent. Really, regardless if I was running Athey Performance or if I was working with SEALs or in athletics or chief wellness officer. I always start my day reading. I'm curious. I like trying to stay abreast as much as I can to like world events, things happening in the community. So I have my list of news sources, if you will, that I like tapping into, just trying to very quickly peruse the headlines every once in a while, diving into one of them more in depth. Um, and then besides like the events of the day or the weekend or whatnot, I do enjoy that reading time, just trying to be curious. And oftentimes it may be like a peer-reviewed article that I saw a colleague post on LinkedIn. Um, it may be a book that I'm reading. It may be, yeah, it just kind of just depends, but I just like that early morning time. I do try, it's easier now with the sun coming up. It being warmer out, I do try to get that morning sun, direct sunlight. And I have my mom routine then. I wake up before everybody else. Um, and then I have my mom routine. So my youngest daughter is still at home with me. And so I usually am momming with breakfast or lunches and getting everything on track for what I need for her out the door. And then in terms of my day with Athey Performance, it could look different. It could be a lunch and learn that I'm providing with a client. It could be collaborating with partners in the industry, networking more on the biz dev side of things. And it could also be like a coaching client. So I could also have that coaching client. And then all the administrative follow-ups from those types of things, kind of the not so sexy part of running business, whether it's invoices or tax forms and that kind of thing. Um, and I feel really fortunate that I can also schedule some me time in there. So I do work out and this time of year in the spring, I also then try to make my kids softball games in the evenings. So um, I have never related well to the stark. A lot of people talk about like work-life balance, and I think I may have shared this with you before, but I'll share it with your listeners here. Um, work-life balance. I've never met a high performer who has this stark divide where they carve out. What I've found from those performers that I've admired and quite like, frankly, have been incredibly successful, both perhaps in their professional pursuits, but also maybe in having meaningful, fulfilling relationships, is an incredibly um, strong ability to be present and to prioritize um, and also then cope with kind of the reactions or the impacts of not being able to be everywhere at every time. So for me, yes, I work on a Saturday or Sunday, but that may be because on a Monday morning I need to help my daughter go visit a college or something, So um, I don't really carve out my schedule. That may work for some. It's just never been my experience in that. And most importantly now, I focus on if I'm at her game, I'm at her game. I might, in between innings, check an email or send a text message, but try to be as present as possible because there's been times where I know my kids have been disappointed because I wasn't at the performance. I was at a work obligation that in that moment I needed to prioritize. And so it kind of has cut both ways over the course of the 25 years and just really try to focus, despite it being very full week, where I can be as present as possible for those who mean so much in my life.
Yeah, I like that. I think that resonates. Not necessarily like I feel like we hear a lot about like boundaries, like have hard boundaries, like I'll never work after 6 p.m. or whatever that is. And I think what I hear you saying is that's not necessarily gonna work. It's more like, okay, but if my daughter has a game at 6 p.m. or if it's at 3 p.m., I'm gonna make time for that, go there if it works, that's the priority at the time. Go there and be fully present. And maybe you will finish work at 8 o'clock that night and
Mhm.
it doesn't really matter. You're not gonna feel bad about that. Like, oh my, I shouldn't be working at night kind of thing. I don't know. I'm kind of making that up, but is that
Yeah, I mean, I think, first and foremost, like I think boundaries are important as long as they're aligned with your values and what you need, right? Like and you are balancing then, once I became a mother, it wasn't always about solely what I needed in that moment, right? So I think there's a lot of nuance to these concepts, and sometimes I push back a little bit because in my mind it sounds like a hack just to say, oh, well, life balance, kind of like what you were saying, right? Like my work-life balance hack is I'm not going to do anything after 6 p.m. Um, if that is congruent with what you need and what you value, if you're protecting your family time, I'm all for it. I think it comes down to like what is behind that hard stop, right? And then how flexible are you? And so I've just experienced, I tend to experience life pretty dynamically, and the more flexible I can be while not sacrificing who I am, what I value, and what I want from my children. Those are the like that's the top, my kids. Um, it just kind of looks different for everybody. And I also will be the first to acknowledge that I'm in a place now, whether it's in my career, where I am personally, that I have a few more options than I did, say, early on in my career. I was talking with a amazing colleague, albeit like at a different point in his career. He was just coming out, finishing his doctorate. And I made a comment to him. He has worked in the major leagues. Um, Actually, to come out with a doctorate, he has impressive number of years that he had worked in professional sport. And now he's looking as a psychologist with his doctorate to get a full-time position, kind of weighing different options. And in the course of that conversation, he said to me, he's like, you know what? I'm not willing to go. He was to XYZ organization because I just don't get a sense they value the service or they would value me. And I looked at him and I said, I admire that. I admire, I remember having a mentor, someone I looked up to in the field say the best skill I can learn in a colleague is recognizing there are some jobs I need to say no to. Well, when I was early on in my career, there wasn't a LinkedIn where I jumped on and saw sports psych positions advertised. We were trudging through trying to make our own way. And in some instances, many of us were some of the first in those positions at the universities we were serving. And he said back to me, he's like, I also realize the industry's at a different point. I'm at a different point. And I can be somewhat selective and then also have to sometimes do the things that you don't want to do to be able to do the things you do want to do. So um, I don't want to come off, I guess, as insensitive to everyone's situation is very unique and different. And I can say at the beginning of my career, I may not have had the room for that flexibility that I experience now. So I just want to be compassionate towards that.
A great point. I feel like I do see people a lot who tout those things like, oh, these strong boundaries or these just like rules of like, oh, I feel like I see a lot of it in terms of like all the self-care you should be doing and like all the help you should be like hiring so that
Yeah.
you can send your efforts elsewhere and things like that. And I'm just like, that's just so unrealistic. I know for so many people, you have to already be at a certain level where any of those things are even possible, like
Awesome.
financially, in terms of time,
Right.
and of, yeah, I feel like there's a point in time where you get to a place where you can pass up opportunities. And I mean, of course, I'm sure there's always instances where there's things you should not say yes to, like,
Right, right. There are some deal breakers that regardless
yeah, but
need to be
there's
there. Yeah.
definitely times in, I mean, most of the people I know's past when you're just getting started where you do maybe say yes to things that are not exactly what you want or not the,
Yeah,
exact.
and that's some of kind of how it is, getting out there, getting some experience. And the other piece of that is it would not have been for some of those opportunities or those positions that I had that I needed that experience to either double down in my awareness and of what I really enjoyed and was good at, as well as some awareness of just because I can do that doesn't mean I should be doing that,
Yeah.
right? And same thing, that's probably one of my greatest challenges starting a company and building a small business is it is probably the greatest challenge. It's just because I can do it doesn't mean I should do it. And I I can go out there and research the latest AI tool and figure out how to make some Canva pretty post, and that take me literally hours to do. And if I take a step back and with a business, like more of a strategic mindset and ask myself, is that the best use of my time and my resources? The answer is no. Like my kids are like, no, it's just not. It's not the learning curve for some of that and is just, you know, I I didn't have a phone until I was, way out of undergrad. So, I mean, just because you can doesn't mean you should do all of those things. And I do appreciate your point. I think we have to be careful in making assumptions that people can do some of like that have the same set of circumstances as our own. And everybody is really in a unique position.
Yeah. Yeah. And that being said, when you're talking to leaders or, I mean, I guess even thinking about yourself and you're obviously in a leadership position in your company now, leading your team. Like I want to dive into some of those things. And again, this is probably such a broad question. You can help me narrow it down.
Mhm.
But when you're approaching someone or someone's coming to you, I guess, saying like, "Hey, I don't know if people like self-identify as like I'm a high performer and I want to, maybe get to from where I am to this other place, or I just want to lead my team better, or make sure I'm optimizing myself or my life or my day." Again, I don't know like exactly where someone comes from, and what they say, but are there like a couple of things that we could kind of discuss right now that leaders listening to this who are, small business owners like ourselves
Mhm.
should be keeping in mind when it comes to, I guess I want to say optimizing our lives because I feel like that's maybe where a lot of people are.
Yeah. Well, to the first part of that question, like, do people come in with like what we would consider like this is the issue, or like I want to get better at this? Sometimes, I mean, sometimes be working with an executive, for example. I'll start with a pretty broad question, like, what is one thing that you would like to strengthen, or one strength that you have that you have that you're not maybe tapping as consistently as you would like to, because there's a reason that they are in the position that they are, right? Like you don't grow to manager, director, VP, EVP, or a C-suite without something in your bag,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes it may be kind of going back to what works, and given this new set of circumstances, new position, new team, COVID, like who knows what happened externally. It may be kind of recalibrating and grounding back and helping them recenter on those strengths and those skills that got them where they are sometimes. And through that holistic approach and evaluating it, I may be able to give some insight back, hopefully, to say maybe there's another tool that would be worth adding right now. I use that analogy a lot or the metaphor a lot. I moved from Tucson, Arizona, the desert, to Virginia Beach, Virginia, very humid climate. If I was a home builder, my guess is I'd have some pretty solid tools I would have used for building each one of those homes. And I'm guessing that there's some specialty tools that would be needed given the different contexts that those homes are being built in. And as we evolve in our roles, in our lives, in our cognitive development, personal development, maybe our teams, generations get blended, right? You hear a good bit about that. Like, how do you manage differing personnel from different generations and kind of maybe culturally those individual differences? We have to add tools to our toolbox. So when I work with executives and leaders and they come in, some of it maybe they're coming in with a specific challenge that either has been brought to them or has come to their awareness, and they're motivated to make some shifts to address that specific challenge. Some of it may be just uh, through the course of our conversation and assessment, identifying certain areas that we could look at um, to help them strengthen and reach the goals that they've identified. As far as like what can we take away from that? I think we have three core performance tenets that we really use that underpin whether we're giving talks, trainings, or even that coaching. And the first I will say is one cannot perform if not well. So wellness is the foundation of our performance. This is really apparent when we're watching our favorite team play on a Saturday and that athlete goes down with an ACL. No one is expecting that athlete to go to the sideline, put a brace on, and come back in. That's not the appropriate level, right? We have to address that wellness concern, appropriate assessment, diagnosis, treatment, intervention, strengthening, rehab, recovery, and then coming back in. Um, you can use the sport analogy as well. Like we saw that become notice of like our response to say injuries that are not as apparent, like concussions. We've seen a greater sophistication in our understanding of that injury, how we can prevent, how we can intervene, and how we can help people recover and come back. Um, in our own lives as leaders, um, what are some of those areas, that wellness also could compromise? And if we are not appropriately addressing and putting first in caring for that, could really compromise any of these other leadership. I already mentioned the one earlier around sleep. We do a lot with biomarkers, understanding how our fueling impacts our energy availability, not just caloric intake, but also maybe like what we're eating, when we're eating, how we're supplementing, how we're hydrating. Um, and then we also take a look at how physical activity, which is a huge exercise. If we want stress management, exercise is like our go-to, right? And then other active recovery strategies. So wellness is the foundation. The second performance tenet that we go to is I use this saying about like what got you here won't keep you here. And I use that analogy about how we live in dynamic lives, right? Our personal lives, there's always change happening. It may be because of one relationship somebody's growing up. I went from having two little girls to two teenagers. That was a change. Now I have one in college, one about to leave home. Um, so when we live in these dynamic times, how can we look at different shifts or different tools that can help us with the new time that we woke up? Today is different than yesterday. Tomorrow will be different from today. And so those mental tools, those mental shifts, skills are critical as we continue to evolve. And then the third one is relationships are the agent of change. Social connection, connective relationships is the number one antidote for resilience.
Hmm.
Uh, so when you're going through stressful times, there is a significant difference in those who and how they recover from those who have had that close relationship and those who have not. And when I hear the stats today, especially it's about different cohorts, like young men, for example, or people's rating of loneliness at certain generations, right? Like when I hear it is of significant concern because we know the human stress response, that sympathetic kind of gas pedal getting stuck and those stress hormones being run, they can be immediate, like 6-second kiss, 20-second hug, right? Like we are social emotional beings. And so that connection, even if not physical, I gave those stats, but even if not physical, is so crucial. And you will often hear leaders come in and if you ask enough questions to better understand whatever X concern is, there is a relational component to it,
Interesting.
right? I need to be a more charismatic leader. Why? Because I need to connect. I'm a CEO. I'm external facing. I need to be able to connect. And maybe I'm just more of an introvert and that's never been my comfortable space. But I'm now in this role, I need to be able to connect either with industry partners, with investors, maybe it's with employees at a town hall, right? There's a relational component to it. A lot of leaders I've worked with also are talking about how they can optimize their team, whether it's because of retirement changes happening on their team, new hires coming in. There's these strong relational components. So oftentimes you'll see people motivated and adapting because of those relational elements, but not just for kind of like recovery adaptation. It's more of like, hey, this seems to be working better, and I feel stronger and I feel um, more motivated because of the circle around us. No one got to the podium by themselves. I mean, every Olympian at the top of the podium, they'll tell you. a laundry list of people who helped them get there. And if you talk to anyone who serves in the military, you ask them, why you do this? Why are you jumping out of planes? Why are you doing these crazy missions? Tell you it's the guy to the right and left of me.
Mm.
Like that connection is so powerful. And I think we could all take that in our lives, whatever our role is, in our moments that matter.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I feel like I haven't heard, I mean, like that's new to me. Like I feel like the one takeaway I got stuck on was like, it sounds like if I have more hugs, I might end up being more sleepy. Like I'm gonna tell my son that when he's like doesn't have time for that. And
Yeah, do it. I don't know how old your son is, but like I can tell you the 17-year-old, I have to ask, and I don't know. It's always a request, and sometimes the request is denied, but
yeah, mine's still 10. He's still pretty affectionate, but I've
oh, good.
come in, he's gonna
Yeah.
cry a little
I
bit.
remember I had one who was like my cuddler, and then teenager years struck. They don't cuddle as much, at least with me.
The cuddling might get replaced. I know.
Yeah,
But I'm like, there's no way he's gonna grow out of this. He loves it so much, but I know it's
I
gonna.
know. They do. They're like, Mom. Okay.
Oh, but yeah, no, I mean, I know you said way more than that. But it is interesting. I mean, I found that really interesting what you said about how some of those physical relationships or interpersonal relationships, even if it's not work related, is kind of what I heard, can really actually have an impact. And then, of course, also those relationships with your team and
Yeah. And I mean, it underscores the significance of making sure as a leader you are selecting well, right? Like who are you surrounding yourself with and how are you supporting them so that they can support you? Um, absolutely.
yeah, because I feel like a lot of it too. I mean, I feel like a lot of the conversations I have with people who are, maybe other business owners and stuff, it's around challenges around delegation, being able to step back and trust your team, making sure things are happening the way they need to happen, even if you're not the one doing them. I guess that's all kind of the same thing. Um, and motivating your team to be able to run the company in the ways that you want it to. And all of that is so much around, yeah, those relationships, who you have and how you're making sure that they have what they need in order to then support you and what you need for taking the company where you want to take it and things like that.
Yeah, when you have teammates and you're trying to motivate them, I mean, it's really important to remember that external rewards have the risk of diminishing or extinguishing internal motivation. So a lot of like in sport, for example, you'll hear like these big contracts, right? Like, well, if these athletes have multi-million dollars contracts, why are we finding them when they don't show up for training?
Hmm.
Why are they still not going to the gym? This is what happens. So the athlete who gets this full ride scholarship, the goal was always to get the scholarship. Now you have the scholarship and you've got 4 years of high intensity training. Whoa, that takes motivation, right? So if you have a team and you're paying them a very good salary, above industry salary, you would be remiss to think that that external reward is going to be solely the motivation. There are some individuals out there who are very motivated by profits. Not not all. And so when you look at internal motivation, I go back to like there's a theory called self-determination theory that identifies three core components. One, autonomy. So you do have to give them space. Like, it does get annoying if somebody asks me to go do something and then turns around and they're doing it too. Like, you're like, well, then why did you bother asking me to do it?
Mhm.
Um, which means also as a leader, you have to self-regulate and remember that their mistakes are necessary to build their autonomy, which feeds into the second one of their sense of competence. So ideally, they're competent, or you wouldn't have hired them in the first place, right? I understand there may be some cultural issues to your organization, maybe your own workflow processes that you identify as kind of your secret sauce and you want to make sure. So you may have to train them up. In general, however, I would hope that there's some competent skill set that you're hiring them for. And then the third for internal motivation we look at is that sense of relatedness or connectedness. So when you're dosing, like you said, can you express your confidence in their competence? Can you give them the space to develop that, give them the autonomy to go out and execute and learn from it, and then maintain the connectivity, you know, um, a climate where people can acknowledge and not take personally, but can acknowledge, like, what did we learn from this? What do we want to do differently next time? What are the takeaways in that learning environment where it's not punitive if you made a mistake? It's not viewed as a judgment for who you are. So when I think of internal motivation, that's oftentimes where I go. It's really hard as a leader. It's not easy.
No, but that's so good. I mean, so you're saying most people are, or like basically what we can do to strengthen our teams is make sure that our teams have this internal motivation and that most people are going to be more kind of successful if they have that internal motivation than an external motivation. So,
Um, I mean, it's certainly going to help them, right? Like you're going to face adversity, you're going to face challenge, so you need fuels to keep going. Um, you know, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like that is a fuel. It's not a sustainable fuel, but it can be a little bit of a spark. Like, yeah, I'll show you. I can get this project done. I can get this over the finish line. It's just hard to sustain that over time versus if you really get to know your team members and have a better understanding of what really fills them up and motivates them long term. It may be people. I have a great colleague and friend, Dr. Rob Fazio. He does a lot around the motivational currency, right? It could be people, it could be profits, as I already meant, could be purpose, right? And you're hearing some of that in generational influences, cultural influences. Um, I was talking to a colleague of mine who kind of is more towards like transitioning to retirement, been in the industry 35 years and talked about the generation coming out and being surprised that a couple of the new hires were motivated more about understanding the perhaps environmental ways that the company more in the green space, like more aligned with that purpose, those values than they were perhaps the salary or lifestyle such as remote versus hybrid versus on-site. Um, really you know, what connected, what fueled them. So you have to know your people. You have to really understand what motivates them. And it could be profits. I don't want to dismiss that. But if you stop there, you might be missing some opportunities that to understand really what's driving people.
yeah, no, that makes sense.
Mm.
We've got to get to know people
Yeah.
before they come on the team, ideally, I think, and then
Yeah.
also right away as they do come on, so that you're creating those experiences or paying attention and being aware of the things that are going to be affecting their experience with you, their motivation and ultimately success. Um, I think that's a great thing to think about and thing to definitely keep in mind as we're building out teams, trying to yeah, just run the best teams we can. I feel like everyone I talk to, people who listen to this podcast, my friends who own businesses, it's not just about creating a business. It's not just about doing what we do. It's also like I'm creating a workplace here. I'm creating a jobs for people. I want it to be the best job they've ever had. Like so many people say that, and I say that too. I'm like, why wouldn't I want the people who work for me to think this is the best place they've ever worked? Like we have the power to create that. And
Yeah.
so like these are the things we need to be thinking about and be spending time on and figuring out and
Right. And it goes both ways, right? I remind people like no one's ever going to meet your needs 100% of the time. Your spouse or your partner's not, your boss isn't, right? Like, but certainly entering in with that intent shapes then how you act or you lead in creating the climates around you. And so maybe you're not going to bat 1,000 and meet everyone's needs every single part of the time, but certainly more times than not, if you as a leader are creating those healthy, safe, trusting spaces where people can take risks, where they are feeling supported and yeah, they can walk away with the experience that you're describing. right? It's the sometimes the smaller interactions that build. People talk about cultures all the time. Well, cultures can be take a minute to shift, and depending on your role as a leader in your company, you may be a small business, you may be the CEO, you may be able to do that. You may also be a VP of a global enterprise, right? You're not going to shape that culture. You can, and you have direct control over shaping the climates, your team meetings, team huddles, your one-on-ones, how you communicate via email, text message. All of those pieces create a climate of interaction that, certainly can be uplifting and supporting and challenging and motivating. And then it also can take a flip and be less so.
Yeah. And ultimately, if we do pay attention to those things and have strong teams around us, that's going to make us more successful in the long run and feel better as a leader and help us be able to optimize our own performance because we know we can rely on the people around us. We know we have strong relationships with the people we're working with day to day. And yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, this is so good. I always ask people two things at the end, and I know we got to wrap up here, but tell us what's one thing, and this could be super quick or whatever we want to go into, but what's one thing that you wish you had known more about when you first started your business?
Ooh. I mean, I think I'll go back to just because I can doesn't mean I should. And I think when launched my business, that would be the first piece. And then the second one definitely is everything takes longer than you think. I have been given the opportunity to work on my patience. And um, yeah, it just everything it is truly um, it's a test of patience and also um, consistency, like being able to put something into consistent action. I am I love the startup world because I do like trying things and then iterating and going forth and trying something else, right? And so in startup, especially in lean startup mode, you test it. I want the data, but then I'm not going to sit with something. I'm going to change it and keep going. So I wouldn't say that like I just stick with things. I'll give some things depending on what the project is, maybe 6 months, but I am impatient. So I have to take my own advice and go back to looking at how I can be more deliberate and consistent in those actions and continue to reflect and learn from them and iterate, but sticking with that consistency and not getting frustrated right out of the gate. So, but it's hard. I'm human too.
Yeah. Is there any other like last piece of advice in general that you would want to share with listeners here?
I think at the end of the day, whether it was sport, whether it was military, now in business, I go back to the power of relationships. Um, my work, when I look at the impact, I mean, I've always can grind and I have grit and I can get through challenges. Um, I'm a single mom, have two wonderful, amazing girls. But I can, I only want to reiterate that probably I think Sheryl Sandberg and some others have said the most powerful someone choice that one makes for their career is their partner. And I, when I look back, um, just my energy, my ability to tolerate stress, arguably in the period of my life where I'm supposed to neurophysiologically perhaps be the least intolerant. Um, I find that having a partner, having that support network, so crucial in navigating life's punches because I think everyone has their story, everyone has their challenge, and having that connection, that village around you, however you define that, is just absolutely um, critical.
Mm,
Mhm.
so good. Okay. Tell people where they can find you if they want to connect with you more personally or, or your business.
Absolutely. So I am on Twitter, Dr. Amy Athey. Athey Performance recently has launched accounts on Instagram, and so you can find find us at Athey Performance on Instagram, Facebook, and then also on LinkedIn. You can find us there. So, and then our website is atheyperformance.com.
Amazing. We'll link to all of that so people can find you and connect with you. I encourage people to reach out when they hear someone on a podcast.
Absolutely.
Others, I think like, yeah, say you heard her here. And I think,
Absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. Sharing and certainly if you have questions, please reach out. I'd be glad to respond.
thank you so much. That's so thoughtful. Thank you for coming on today and sharing
Thank you.
and your experience. And it was really, really great to get to talk to you today.
Thank you.